Welcome. Welcome, Nikatma Prabhu. Welcome.
Well, while we're waiting to start, I want everyone to meet my cat. This is Tom.
Okay.
He is a good companion.
Right. Nice. Hare Krishna, Sankirtan Prabhu. Very well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare All right, so it's now 8:30 already, 2 minutes. Vanchakalpa Turvescha, Kripasindhu Vyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhya, Vaishnavebhya, Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pesthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini, Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschat. Welcome, everybody. We're going to play a video at this point, and then we'll get started. And Nikatma Prabhu will lead the conversation with the first person, then Rajendranath Prabhu will speak, and after that, Sankirtan Prabhu. This is being live streamed and recorded for posterity so that people in the future, way into the future, will also know about the beginnings of the Hare Krishna movement, because the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party was such a integral part of the formation of ISKCON and the early days of ISKCON. And all of you wonderful devotees who are going to be speaking today were such important devotees in the movement that people would love to know about. And so I'll be introducing each of you before you speak, and we'll love to hear from you. And then we'll have a discussion between the three of you and others who might like to chime in about whatever we'd like to speak about, referencing the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. And we do speak somewhat about Krishna Maharaj as well. So if you can bring him in somehow, these are the disciples getting together, trying to have this happen. And of course, all the other wonderful devotees, every devotee in the traveling Sankirtan party is equally important to us, all very beloved to us. So please speak about anybody you'd like to speak about, emphasize anybody you'd like to. Thank you so very much. And we'll get started with the video. So Damyan Prabhu, can you start the video?
My name is Vishnu Janaswamy. I've been in this movement for about 7 years now. And we're traveling around the country in a big Greyhound bus. It's parked right over there, in fact. It's fixed up like a temple inside, and we carry all this stuff comes out of its belly just like a big transcendental fish. It rides into college campuses. It rides into scenes like in Berkeley and also in Santa Cruz, California, different parts all over the country. And it unfolds a festival just like the one we're having today. It's not an ordinary bus. It feels like that, like a gigantic transcendental fish that kind of swims around in this material world. It's on its way out. And it's inviting other people to get on board too. So any of you that would like to get out of this ocean of birth and death, this ocean of old age and disease, and enter into our real atmosphere, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, our invitation is open to all of you to chant, to dance, to feast. Not to necessarily join our religion, not to shave your head, not to put on robes, not to do all the things that we do, but to do that which was done by all great souls, singing the glories of the Absolute, dancing in ecstasy, and feasting on beautiful food first offered with love to the Absolute. That's our invitation, not that you shave your head, you see.
A lecture where Prabhupada said, I have written these books, especially for my devotees. He said, it's not a question of just selling the books. He says, but you must read the books. Another time we were on, it was Marine Drive in Bombay. Rupanuga Prabhu, I believe, was there also. And he was visiting, he was a guest GBC secretary, would come in cycle 1 month of each year. And the issue came about wearing karmi clothes. And Prabhupada viewed in favor, it doesn't matter what they wear, whatever will best distribute the books. Another time, our Radha Damodar party, we decided to use incense packs as a warmer, you can say a warmer, to get the person warmed up. So a person would buy a pack of incense, and then, basically we would give them a book and ask for something further if they would give. So when this was told to Prabhupada, I told them what we were doing is that generally we usually give about, 4 packs of incense, a pack of incense for $1, and on the 5th pack of incense, we would give a big book plus, get a little bit of extra money. And each time we gave the pack, we give it back to Godhead. So Prabhupada that was reported to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, oh, this is not good. And he wrote a letter in response to Rameswar saying this should be stopped. I happened to show up that day in Bombay to take my turn as a secretary. And the secretary, Hansaduta, told me, this letter is going out. I rushed into Prabhupada. I said, sure, Prabhupada, I don't mind, but then I have to say that our orders are going to be going down about 50%. Prabhupada stopped. He said, are you paying the book fund? I said, not only are we paying, we always have a credit. Then he called his secretary back and he said, destroy that letter. He said, never mind then. If you're paying for the books, okay. Second canto Bhagavatams especially Prabhupada wanted. Bhagavad Gita and first and second canto Bhagavatams. He liked the book distribution we were doing. At one point I was complaining to Prabhupada that they're not printing. We were distributing so many books with the Radha Damodar party. I said, Prabhupada, they can't keep up with our distribution. They must. He said, all right, don't worry. They were doing 20,000 at a time. He said, I will instruct them to print 50,000. He said, but one thing is that although they can't keep up with you, you can't keep up with me because I'm 3 cantos ahead or 2 cantos ahead of you both. He said, so I'm ahead of both of you. He got into the competitive mood.
Hare Krishna. Welcome again, everybody. I'd particularly like to also welcome our 3 speakers today, 3 very wonderful speakers today. His Grace Nikatma Prabhu, His Grace Radhendranath Prabhu, and His Grace Sankarshan Prabhu. Welcome to all 3 of you. You'll each be speaking 20 to 30 minutes, as you like. and then have more discussions between the three of you and others who would like to chime in as well. And because this is being recorded for posterity, I'd like to introduce you before you speak. The first of you who's going to speak is Nikatma Prabhu. Nikatma Prabhu, are you here? I saw you earlier, not seeing you now.
He's there, Prabhu, but the video is not on.
Oh, the video is not on, okay. Nikatma Prabhu, can you put your video on and your audio on as well? Yeah, I can see it now. May not be at the camera. Nikatma Prabhu? There you go. Audio is on now.
Can
Hare
you see me?
Krishna. Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you, but cannot see you yet. Your video is still not.
How do I turn that on? I don't know. I've never done this.
Somebody else may be able to advise what to do. There should be something at the bottom that says video and says stop video on mine. Start video.
Nityananda Prabhu, this is Yudhisthira. If he hovers his mouse over the lower left side of the screen where he's seeing the Zoom call, there should be a button where it would enable video.
I'm using an iPad.
Using an iPad.
Sorry, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's
So,
what
Prabhuji, let me request you the video and then you can start.
Okay, that's good.
You can accept, yeah.
Just say accept.
Okay.
Well, now we can see you, Nikatma Prabhu.
Hey,
Hey, Haribol. All right. So before you get started, Prabhu, I'd just like to introduce you. So His Grace Nikatma Prabhu was initiated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in 1973. He was a member of the BBT party doing big books in the airports and was in Chicago in 1974 when they merged with the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. All the way until His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami went to China. During the bus party time, he used to train all states in the United States. After that, he was a regional secretary in Texas under His Grace Bhagavan Prabhu until Goswami Maharaj returned to the States. After the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, he served as a temple president in ISKCON Detroit and Seattle, property manager in Los Angeles, and Govinda's restaurant manager. Currently, he is back in ISKCON LA as a vice president and property manager. Welcome, Nikatma Prabhu. Please.
thank you, man. Oh, it's so nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
So what would you like me to do?
Speak about anything you'd like to about the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Vishnujan Maharaj, anybody at the time that comes to mind that you'd like to speak about.
Well, thank you very much for the honor. It's so wonderful to hear all this nectar and be in the association of such wonderful Vaishnavas, and it brings up a lot of sweet memories about Radha Damodar. I've told my wife numerous times that that was the most joyful time of my life, without a doubt.
Nice.
I first saw, as I had explained earlier, I joined in early '73, and we were in the movement for, in those days, 2-3 months before you got initiated. So after a couple months, we got initiated, and shortly after that, we means Savas, Vyapi, myself, the three of us at the same time in Denver. And it was shortly after that that the Radha Damodar TSKP audio cassette came out shortly around that time. And I just fell in love with the music. It was just so heavenly. And it just so happened that shortly around that time, shortly after, the Radha Damodar bus came up from Berkeley. They had been down in California for a while doing some kirtan and distribution. And the bus pulled into Denver. And it was such a transcendental experience to see this group of devotees who were so special. And I remember talking to, I think Brika Sangha was driving at the time. And I asked him if I could go in the bus. So he said, yeah, come during Mangal Arti. So during Mangal Arti, I went out to the bus and went inside, and there was Vishnu Jan Maharaj. He was leading the Mangal Arti for Radha Damodar. And it was I have to say, it was the highlight of my early years to see him sitting there doing a wonderful bhajan in front of Radha Damodar. And I was just immediately attracted. I thought I have to join this group. They were down in Berkeley, and they were picking up devotees here and there. They made a lot of nice new bhaktas during the programs down there. So now they had come up to Denver, and I think they were going east. And so when I went into the bus, I just was mesmerized. And Vishnu Jan Maharaj said I should go with them. And I, after they had left town, actually just before they left town, I had gone to Kuru Sestra, who was the president in Denver at the time. And I asked him, can I join their party? And he said, absolutely not. He was so adamant about that. But I believe somebody from Denver joined their group. And then they proceeded east. So that was my first contact with Radha Damodar. But I was just, my heart was there for the longest time. Shortly after that, we got word that Tripurari Das, Brahmachari at the time, was starting a BBT party. They were exploring the idea of having devotees based in Chicago, trained devotees from around the country. They would come there and be trained in big book distribution. The airports were gradually opening. So again, I asked Kuru Sestra, could I go and join this training program? And with the idea, again, also, to be honest, and the idea was to try and get closer to Radha Damodar. And so when I went to, so Kuru Sestra said, yeah, you can go. And I went for, it was supposed to be 3 months. But after 3 months, I can't remember if it was Tripurari or whoever, there were other devotees there. There was Romapad was there, and Kavi Chandra, and some other devotees, Udar Sholka, of course. And I told Kuru Sestra, I'm not coming back. I never returned. And we spent a lot of time just learning big book distribution. And Radha was there from South Africa. I remember some very, very wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Vaishnavas. And so the distribution was going on. And then after some time, it wasn't long after that, that there was a conversation with joining with Radha Damodar. And it would be the BBT Radha Damodar TSKP. And the idea was that there was a group of devotees who would be in the buses and traveling with vans, etc. And then another arm of it would be in the airports. And so they merged, and my service was pretty much after that to go from city to city and from bus to bus, working with big book distributors. And so we traveled everywhere. We went from Chicago to Cleveland to DC to all of the New York airports, and then south. We went to, I spent a lot of time in Atlanta, but just before Atlanta, we were in Chicago for the big installation. You had a picture there. And the installation of the deities, Gornitai deities on the buses. So after that, I went down to Atlanta, and just before Prabhupada came down to Atlanta, we went west. But that gathering in Chicago was very special. There were so many wonderful devotees who were part of that installation and initiation. I remember specifically one really incredible kirtan that was going on. Prabhupada was sitting in the back, facing the deities in Chicago, in the old temple, in Evanston. And he would face Kishore Kishori. And the devotees were running back and forth, doing a wonderful, wonderful kirtan. It just got a little pretty wild, actually. And Prabhupada at one point told them to stop. Don't chant, don't dance so frenetically. You can be happy and ecstatic, that's okay, but don't get too far out there. And there was an offering that was given to Srila Prabhupada when he was on the Vyasasana. And Prabhupada, it was halava, I remember this. It was, Srila Prabhupada tasted it. And he said, who did this? Who cooked this? And they brought the cook out. It was one Mataji. And Prabhupada said, what have you done? You've put salt instead of sugar. How could you do this? And she said the wrong thing. She said, oh, well, Krishna's mercy. Prabhupada got so angry. He said, no, it's not Krishna's mercy. It's your ignorance. So then shortly after that, Prabhupada took off and went off to the east, and we went south. And so my service after that was to, again, join different buses wherever they may be located. Sometimes it was Janardhan, sometimes it was Kavichandra, sometimes it was Gopi up north, and work with their respective distributors. They're predominantly the big book distributors. So I would go to Memphis and stayed there for some time with Prahladananda Swami, or Prahladananda Das Brahmachari at the time. And that was our early years for quite some time. We just traveled, going from place to place, and once in a while meet up with the bus, Radha Damodar bus. Sometimes we'd meet in Dallas when Srila Prabhupada was there, and I traveled with Maharaj from Dallas to Tempe, where he's in Gainesville, right, or in Alachua right now, Nalini Kanta. Nalini Kanta had a preaching program there. So we traveled from Dallas to Tempe, Arizona, and the bus had to get some repairs. So we stayed there and went on campus where Maharaj was doing this, his transcendental chanting, this tape that you played earlier of him chanting. It was just so heavenly. Hasigrami would be playing that sarod, I think it was, the string instrument. And I remember, I think it was Sridhar. Sridhar was worshiping the deity. And just to back up a little bit, when we first walked onto the bus in early '73, it was the first time I'd ever seen Radha Krishna deities, because in Denver we just had Jagannath. And they were so effulgent. They were so incredibly beautiful. And I remember they were dressed in a beautiful pink gowns with lavender flowers. And I still have that picture in my room here, in the living room. I still have that picture. It was just ingrained in my head. And it was the first time I'd ever been so close to a Radha Krishna deity. So when we traveled from Dallas to Tempe, I was able to go on the altar and do an artik for them. It was to be so close to them. They were so merciful. And Vishnu John Maharaj chanting and serenading them so sweetly along the whole route. It was incredible. And then from Tempe, they went east again back to Florida, because I think that was our base, or the base had been established there in Florida. I think it was Gainesville when Amarendra was still there. And I went out west and went from there to San Diego. And Prabhupada went from there, from Atlanta through Dallas, and then went to the West Coast. And he was going there for up and down. I believe he was going from San Francisco to LA, or LA, San Francisco, like that. And we went up to LA when Prabhupada was there for his visiting the temple. We saw him there. And then when he went to San Francisco for Rath Yatra, we joined him up there. That was in '75. I remember that. And that's where I got a second initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And Radha Damodar was there, and Guru Das was given sannyas. And I think it was during that time also that, Vishnu Jan Maharaj was leading the kirtan in front of in front of Subhadra, as Prabhupada was going down the street in Golden Gate. We were going to the site, and there was an interesting exchange between Vishnu Jan and Guru Kripa, where Guru Kripa came in with his Namahata crew, and he just sort of pushed Vishnu Jan Swami aside and took over the kirtan. It was a little aggressive, you could say. But Maharaj was a real transcendental about it. Prabhupada loved his chanting so much. When he took off and went to the site and set up with Radha Damodar right in front of the stage. And there's that picture of Prabhupada dancing with his hands raised in front of Jagannath. And there were so many devotees there, Bahudak and Sudama and others. Vishnu Jan Maharaj was leading the kirtan on the side in front of Radha Damodar. And then Prabhupada got up and started dancing to it. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. After that, Prabhupada always liked Vishnu Jan Maharaj's chanting. Again, as I mentioned, when we went to New Vrindavan for Janmashtami in late '73, everybody was staying down in the old farm in a rickety old farmhouse, but some people had vehicles and others had tents, or you sleep under a truck and get up for the program and go up to the hill, and Vishnu Jan Maharaj would lead the kirtan in front of Radha Damodar. And Srila Prabhupada was there on Janmashtami night, and he was on stage with Radha Damodar, and the devotees were having kirtan. Sridham, it was Subal, that's who it was. It was Subal and Sudama who started dancing back and forth as Maharaj was leading. But they were dancing back and forth, and devotees would go back and forth, and the Prabhupada was looking, and he was just smiling like anything. And then after the kirtan stopped, what did they serve out? They served out a huge cake. That's how we broke our Janmashtami fast with a giant cake. It was cake and some other sweets. It was quite an experience. But again, Maharaj he would lead such nice chanting, and Prabhupada very much relished it. Then after the LA or San Francisco Rath Yatra, Prabhupada was going back overseas. He was going to go East Coast and then back to India. So we followed him from there to New Vrindavan, where there was again a nice gathering of Radha Damodar buses, and the devotees were relishing Srila Prabhupada in the yard. Kirtananda had a house, and on the side there was a wonderful little garden area. Prabhupada would sit there in the evening, and he would lecture, and we'd be able to gather around and listen to him. And there were some wonderful, it may have been mentioned earlier, but there were some wonderful experiences there between him and Dumna at the time, and then Prabhupada went east. Eventually, we ended up going to New York, and then we went to India, where where on the way there was a boatload of devotees. I think there were a good 100 brahmacharis. It was half the party. I remember 100 brahmacharis that were on this chartered plane. It was chartered by all devotees, but we had 100 men, and Vishnu Jan Maharaj was in the front leading the kirtan, and it got so ecstatic. And the devotees were dancing in the plane. The pilot came on and said, "This has to stop right away. We're having a problem guiding our plane." This is not right. You can't be doing this. And so we had to sit down and settle down for a while, at least. Anyway, we stopped dancing, but Maharaj kept on chanting. It was such a wonderful, it was the best plane ride I've ever had. We finally get to India, and we're going through customs, and who's there but Chutananda Swami greeting the devotees, and he's leading a wonderful kirtan with, I remember Riksharaj was there, and there were a couple of devotees, I can't remember. But anyway, the devotees were greeted by these wonderful Vaishnavas chanting. And then we go to the Dham, and that was, you could see Prabhupada was so pleased with having all of these wonderful devotees and sincere practitioners of Krishna consciousness. I think that was one of the highlights again of my life. Prabhupada being there in Mayapur with his servants. At one point, I'm not sure if this was in 75 or 76.
I got him.
Yes.
He's the first speaker. I'm the second.
How much time do I have left? I should be finishing up. Is that right? Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. How much time do I have? I can finish up here.
Yeah, you can whenever you're ready. That's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to share one really far out experience, and that was when we were sitting in Prabhupada's room in Mayapur. The devotees the Radha Damodar party had gone in there with for a darshan with Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had arranged. So I sat right on the side of Srila Prabhupada, right next to him, as so much I could almost touch his feet. And all the devotees were crowded around the front part of his desk and around. And I think it was just Aduna Swami had some dakshin to give to Srila Prabhupada. And when he handed it to him, he said, here, Srila Prabhupada, this is some dakshin for you. We have some, I think it was $60,000 US. And Prabhupada took it, and he just barely acknowledged it. He grabbed it and put it on the side, and he just kept on talking with the devotees and having a wonderful exchange with them, and back and forth it went. And thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for having us. And Prabhupada said you should come here every year. That was also pretty nice for us, although the management wasn't too happy about having 100 people coming every year, but we wanted to come. But that was, I think, the last time that I remember seeing Vishnu Jan Swami. It was shortly after that he left us, and it was very traumatic for many of the devotees on the party. And after that, we all came back to the States, and the history's there that the party ended up dividing itself. There were certain circumstances that happened to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and ended up going to China. I ended up going to New York for a little while, and then went with Tripurari, and we started a BBD party, it's called, Bhaktivedanta Book Distributors. And we were based in St. Louis. And we were there for it wasn't long before Tamal Krishna Maharaj came back from China. But before he came back, the idea was to incorporate Texas into the zone. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he got back, Texas was added to it, but Chicago went its way. Shri Ram Swami left because he was for some time with the party as a whole. And then St. Louis eventually was taken over by Surdas, and so many other devotees went to Texas. where I met Sankirtan Prabhu. And we were in Texas for some time, and then finally Maharaj came back, and actually Bhagwan Swami had taken over that area prior to Maharaj coming back. And when he came back, everybody split. Everybody split in the whole zone. Ganapati Swami, this one, that one, everybody left. Kazi Ram, everybody left. The only person that was there from the old crew, you could say, was myself. So when Maharaj came back, we were having an initiation, and Maharaj said, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, he was sitting down, and we were looking at the new bhaktas, new initiates, and some of them had socks. They didn't have neck beads. It was a little mixed up scene. And Prabhupada and Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Naikama, you see these devotees, you can't leave. You can't leave me. You have to stay here and help me with these Prabhus. And I don't know if Nityananda Prabhu, you were initiated there at that time, or I don't exactly remember. But Dwarkanath, or was it, I forget his name now. Jivananda was there. There were so many other wonderful Prabhus. And so I told Maharaj I can stay for a little while, but I can't take the politics. It's just too much for me. So I ended up actually leaving and went up to Denver, and so many things happened years after that. And I ended up one time, I think it was in 01 or 02, Maharaj was in Mayapur, and I was there also with him. We went there for the festival, and I met up with him again. I hadn't seen him for a long time. And every day, he and I would go down to the Ganga for a bath. And he said, you should come to my room in the evening. And so I came to his room in the evening, and we would have bhajan with a number of devotees. And he'd always ask me to play mridanga because he liked the way I played. Nah, it was nothing. It was sloppy, but he just wanted me to, he was being kind. So every evening we would have a little bhajan. In the daytime, we'd go to the Ganga. And then on the last day he was there, he came up to me and said, you know, those early days that Radha Damodar was together, so many things happened. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm so sorry. If there was ever a time that I had offended you or acted inappropriately or been mean, and I sincerely am sorry. And I told Maharaj that, Maharaj, no, you've been the kindest to me. I've always respected you. I love you as a dear godbrother, and I'm so happy to have had your association. So after that, he gave me a nice embrace. We went down to the Ganga, had a nice swim that evening. We went back for his kirtan in his room, and at the end of the kirtan, he said, I'm leaving tomorrow. And I said, well, I'll see you before you leave, I hope. But they left early, and the rest is history.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so very much, Nikat. That's so sweet. Thank you so very much. Please stay around for the discussions as well.
Yes.
We now introduce His Grace Rajendranath Prabhu. Rajendranath Prabhu was initiated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and joined the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party in May 1975 on the bus with His Holiness Vishnujan Swami, and His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami. He was in the quote bus crew, building 2 new buses, and oversaw the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party until the final end, with Radha Damodar going to Gita Nagari. And the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party helped Goswami Maharaj set up the finances at the St. Louis and Dallas temples. Then moved to Los Angeles and became the vice president and editor of the quote Sankirtan newsletter. He was put in charge of the BBT and ISKCON property division. Currently, he is serving in California. Welcome, Rajendranath Prabhu. Please enlighten us.
All right, well, thank you very much. Sankar, if you want to speak next, Sankar-san, instead, be my guest.
No, I think you can go ahead, Prabhu. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Sankarshan Prabhu, did you need to leave or something? You need to speak before, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna?
Now we can hear you.
What is it? Hare Krishna?
You want to speak before Rajendranath Prabhu?
I was told I was next in the queue, so I expected to come next. I was told I was the second one.
I was told otherwise. I'm sorry. So let me correct that and speak, and then Rajendranath Prabhu can come on. Is that okay?
So am I going to, you want me to speak or wait?
Yes, I'm going to introduce you first, please. Let me introduce you first, and then you can speak. So to introduce Sankarshan Prabhu, His Grace Sankarshan Prabhu first joined ISKCON when he met His Holiness Vishnujan Swami in Austin in 1971, who made him a devotee and was in his bus party and road shows. He first met His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada that same year and was initiated by him on 12th August. Srila Prabhupada personally told him that he was pleased with his sincerity and enthusiasm for spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Sankarshan Prabhu fully dedicated his life to serving the order of his spiritual master, to become a guru and deliver the world. For the last 40 years, he has uninterrupted his spiritual
50.
Oh, 50, says 40 in this, sorry. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, in various capacities, including as an assistant to His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami. In the year 2000, in recognition for his full dedication to Srila Prabhupada's mission, ISKCON's Governing Body Commission, GBC, gave him their blessings to initiate disciples. Since that time, he has been regularly traveling and lecturing extensively all over the world for reviving the common Krishna consciousness in the hearts of all living beings. Well known for his internet-based training program, the Ultimate Self-Realization Course, he has attracted over 13,000 subscribers from over 100 different countries. Welcome, Sankarshan Prabhu. Please enlighten us.
Thank you. Vanchagavadarubhyascha kripasandubhya evacha tattitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. All glories to the assembled devotees. Although I was one of the original members of the Radha Damodar party, I'm going to go back to how I connected with Vishnujan Swami, because he's a very, very important person in my life. They say Varma Pradarshaka Guru. Let's see the picture. And I was a young spiritual seeker there in Austin, Texas, and I was understanding Lord Jesus Christ is a self-realized soul. I was thinking, what made Lord Jesus Christ self-realized? And one day I found it in the Bible. He says, "Father, not my will, but thy will be done." So I started praying to God, please, God, guide me how I can be your perfect servant. Please guide me how I can be your perfect servant. And one Sunday morning, a knock came on the door from a girl named Margaret. She said, there's a Hare Krishna Swami in town. He'll be at my apartment in 1 hour. I went down there, and it was Vishnu Jana Swami. And he invited me to a program down in Peace Park, a wonderful, wonderful program. And he had a picture of Radha, a nice poster of Radha and Krishna, his harmonium, and wonderful Bashadam, 3 different preps. And so in this way, I started associating with him. There was it's interesting how he came to Austin. Very interesting story. There was one hippie named Ron the Bead Man decided to sit down in a popular area where all the students crossed the sidewalk going to the campus, right in front of the campus bookstore. He decided to sit down and sell beads on the blanket. So he didn't have any permits, so he was arrested for doing that, but he came and did it again, and they let him get away with it. And then the hippies saw, well, this guy has a blanket, he's getting away with it. So many hippies came and set up blankets. There was a whole hippie street market going on there. And one person named Robin Ferris, he set up a blanket and was selling incense and Prabhupada's books from his blanket. Plus he had a shaved head with a Sika because he liked the Hare Krishna haircut. So when Vishnu Jan heard about this, there's somebody with a Sika selling Prabhupada's books at a hippie street market. He said, Austin sounds like a good place to preach. So that's why he came up here. So he had no temple, but he would come to the campus every day. He would say, invite me to your home and I will turn your home into a temple. So every night you go to the campus, where will the Swami be tonight? And so one night he had a program at Robin Ferris's house. So I remember in those days, we didn't have bottled water. You just go to the kitchen and get a drink. So I went into the kitchen to get a drink of water, and who would be in the kitchen but His Holiness Vishnu Jana Swami. And he looked me straight in the eyes and in a very serious, compassionate way, he said, you have to become sober. Of course, in the hippie days, being sober was no good, that's what the straight people do. We're into being high on this, high on that. But he said, you have to become sober. And I went, wow. I took that really seriously. Wow, got to become sober. So I started associating with him. One university professor named Ray Neubauer, he rented a house for the Swami at 2906 Dancy Street, right near the campus. So now the Swami had a house, and two boys joined him. They became Shri Galim and Dvija Hari. They joined him and got initiated. And so I remember going there and hearing how he would lead that kirtan for the Mangal Arti. It was so mystical. It was so amazing. Really, really amazing thing. So then we had a festival in Dallas, in Lee Park. It's a beautiful area, Turtle Creek Boulevard, a very nice green part of Dallas. So we had a festival there, a Lord Chaitanya festival. And they needed somebody to play the Kazi, and they have a Kazi breaking the drum, Leela. And since I had a beard and long hair, they had me play the Kazi in the drama. Then, oh yeah, one other thing that happened, let's see, oh yeah. That morning before the festival, we were there staying in some place, and so we went to Tandy. Some of us went to Tandy Leather Company and got some beads, and we strung our japa beads. And I chanted my first 16 rounds that day, and I was so pleased. I had chanted, and I tell Vishnu Jana Swami, I think I'd like to become a devotee. And he said, what I'm afraid of is easy come, easy go. He challenged me. He said, not that, easy come, easy go. So anyway, I had my japa beads now, and he challenged me. So I was taking it very seriously to chant the rounds and follow the principles. And so in this way, I still have my long hair and the beard. But this Robin Ferris, he had gotten the Hare Krishna haircut. That was really cool. So he took me to his barber to get a Hare Krishna haircut. Then I went back to the temple, and the devotees, the new brahmacharis are very angry. Who authorized you to shave up? He was very, very disturbed. The Vishnu John Swami was on the phone with the temple president of Dallas, and he said, guess what? The Qazi shaved up. So he took it really, he gave me all encouragement. The Qazi shaved up. And so I was very much encouraged by him. And then he, and then I got recommended for initiation. I moved in, finally got recommended for initiation. And I got a wonderful letter from Prabhupada. In my initiation letter, he said, you have been trained up under the expert guidance of Vishnu Jana Swami. So Prabhupada confirmed my Bhartma Pradarshaka guru had given me expert training. So anyway, then I was sent to Dallas. Then Vishnu Jana Swami went on down to San Antonio because Prabhupada given him an order to open 10 temples. He'd opened Houston, and then he went down, then he came to Austin, now he's going to San Antonio. But then when the initiation letter came, he came back up to do the initiation yajna. Now the amazing thing was, the new president at that time was Ishan Das, and he had been in London where the beetles were becoming cultivated, and he thought, well, let's invite the mayor to come. So actually the mayor of Austin shows up. So Vishnu John Swami is standing there preaching with the mayor. My parents came, kind of a controversial thing with the Hare Krishna, but they see the mayor is attending the ceremony and gave great credibility to my initiation. My dad is sitting there chanting with the mayor of Austin at my initiation ceremony. So anyway, I was sent to Dallas. I spent some time in Dallas, but then Vishnu John Swami had joined this traveling rock opera. They had these deities of Radha Damodar on a school bus. And because they're driving around, they had to tie them with ropes so they wouldn't fall down. And Prabhupada said, he heard they were tying with ropes. He said, oh, you're tying them with ropes. You can name that naughty boy, Damodar. So I went up, the Dallas Satsarupa authorized me. I wanted to go and rejoin Vishnu John Swami. So they were at that time at New Vrindavan rehearsing to do a rock opera in the Syria Mosque in Pittsburgh. So I remember we were staying there at one farm, I think they called it Madhuvan, and rehearsing the rock opera. They ran an extension cord from the farmhouse through the cornfield, way out to the edge of the cornfield, overlooking a river down in the valley. I remember Vishnu John Swami was singing one of our songs, the rolling rivers flow forth from your veins. Oh, Govinda within my heart. So it was really something to see him singing the rolling rivers flow from your veins. And we could see the rolling river right behind him, behind the corn, down at the bottom of the valley. So finally we came that day, and then for that concert, Prabhupada came to New Vrindavan for the Janmashtami and the Vyas Puja. I remember we had Radha Damodar on the stage. There was hundreds and hundreds of devotees had come. There was a pavilion built for the function. And I remember we were fasting. In those days, fasting was not easy for us. We're so used to eating regularly. Fasting was very difficult for us. We're fasting all the way to midnight. So many devotees have their plate in their hand getting ready for 12 o'clock, so they're just really eager to take. So I remember we came all the way to midnight, and it was time to break the fast. And then Prabhupada said, now we will read Krishna book. He said, he told the devotees, I think you're getting impatient. So he went 1 chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters. Yeah, after the 3rd chapter, Prabhupada said, I think you're getting impatient. So then we took Prasadam finally. And then we did the Syria Mosque concert. We had Radha Damodar on the stage. And Prabhupada, they have a special, they put the Vyasasthana in the center aisle of the auditorium. So Prabhupada has the grand seat there of seeing the rock opera. And Radha Damodar is there. And Prabhupada, we had one scene, we had our wigs on, we were like hippies smoking marijuana, making a show. I was smoking marijuana, and Prabhupada said, all our men up there. So this way Prabhupada had a little fun, little humor over our rock opera. So the next morning, somehow or other, Prabhupada had met with Vishnu John Swami, and Prabhupada told him in the rock opera, you can show Radharani's feet. Normally you can't show Radharani's feet, but he said for the rock opera, we could do it. And somehow the Vishnu John shared that with me the next morning. He said, oh, I just met with Prabhupada and he told me this. So anyway, it was an idea the roadshow could go become an off-Broadway production. We're going to merge with the Brooklyn Temple. So we did that. We moved to the Brooklyn Temple, Radha Damodar on the altar there. We had our 3 buses sitting there, I think in Henry Street it was. And, but Vishnu John Swami didn't get along well with Bali Mardan. I think it was Bali Mardan, yeah. So one day he decided, that's it. He told one devotee, take the Radha Damodar, put him on the equipment bus. He invited me and 2 of the others and on the bus, and we headed out. He was going to start a second road show. And he was showing me, he knew some guitar licks from his association with the Jefferson Airplane. He was showing me some guitar licks that we could use in our upcoming rock opera. But then we got further down the road and Prabhupada said, no more rock opera. So then it became the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party. That was our new name. We are now Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party. Just a few of us, 1 bus and 2, maybe 3 or 4 brahmacharis, and that was it. So let's see here. Yeah, then I was, we got to Miami and he dropped me off at the Miami, he donated the Miami Temple. And so that was my end of associating with him. Although I remember there was one recording he did of Gopinath. Gopinath Mamani Vedana Shuno. It was so, I taped over it. After he had his fall down, I taped over it. Someone said, you shouldn't hear a fallen sannyasi. So I regret that to this very day. I had a wonderful recording of him singing Gopinath, the most mystical recording I've ever heard, Gopinath. So for me, Vishnu John Swami is a great hero. It's thought that he had a fall down and he committed suicide in the Triveni, which means liberation. So I take him to me, he's a great inspiration. I often pray for his blessings and his mercy. And I look forward very much to I have his picture right here. I always keep it with me right here. It's right here. Yeah, here. I always keep it here on my desk, right by my computer. Very, very dear soul to me. And of course, then I had the opportunity later on to join with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. That's an interesting story. The Tamal Krishna Maharaj wanted to have he was a GVC at large, but then he wanted to have a zone. So they negotiated to get Houston, Dallas, St. Louis, and Chicago. So I had been sent, after my time in Florida, I'd been sent up to serve in Atlanta. So Atlanta, the Balavana Prabhu sent me, they needed somebody in Houston. So he sent me over to Houston. That was part of his zone at the time. But then when Tamal Krishna Goswami negotiated to get Houston, he wanted to, Balavana wanted to get me back in Atlanta. So there was a whole thing going on. Balavana flew in, tried to convince me to come back to Atlanta. And Tripurari Swami was there negotiating to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. They tried to convince me to stay in Houston. So there was a tug of war. Who's going to get me? They were competing. Who will get Sankarshan Das Brahmachari? So Balavana had known I'd been interested in getting married. So he brought in a woman who already had a baby try to convince me to come back to Atlanta with the offer of this woman. And at that time, I always wanted to have a set of books. Now, I was the Brahmachari librarian at that time. So Balavana offered me a woman who already had a baby, and Tripurari offered me the set of books. So I could have the Brahmachari library as my personal books. So I went for the books. And that way I spent some time in Houston. And then eventually I came to Dallas, where I got so much nice association with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I was running his tape ministry. The Radha Damodar tape ministry was my project. I would record the lectures. I had a high-speed duplicator. I would distribute them. I remember I got some special blessings from him. 2 years During the only persons who went to Mayapur from our zone were Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Sankirtan Das. I got to use the profits from selling the cassette tapes to buy my plane ticket. So I had that nice memories of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He's very, very dear to my heart, very, very dear. I pray for his blessings as well. And Vishnujan Swami, they're my eternal associates within my heart. I always have their wonderful association, and I'm praying for their blessings that I can follow in their footsteps of total absorption, preaching for delivering the fallen souls of this world back to home, back to Godhead. So I guess that's enough for now.
Thank you so very much, Sankarshan Prabhu. That was really very nice. Thank you so very much. Now I'll ask His Grace Rajendranath Prabhu. Please, can you enlighten us? Thank you.
Be glad to. I guess I should start with how I joined the movement. I was I was living in a teepee in Oregon as a hippie, right? All that kind of stuff and everything else. And the BLM came and cut down all the trees, and I said, "Screw this! I'm out of here." And I moved to Portland, and got attracted to the temple there. Because and it was kind of funny because at first, because I had, I somehow I'd gotten some copies of Back to Godhead and stuff like that, and so I'm at the Portland temple. I'm looking at the Gornitai deities and going, which one's Radha and which one's Krishna? I mean, I didn't really know anything, But anyway, I started going every day to Guru Puja. And then one Sunday, first of all, I'm looking at these Back to Godhead magazines, and they all had the advertisement for the bus. The famous little ad where they had put Hare Krishna on the license plate, and and I thought, man, you got to be really, really, special to be able to be on the bus. And then one Sunday, there they are. They're at the temple there, and wow, it was Vishnu John and Tamal Krishna, and huge festival and everything else. And of course, I'm just this total hippie. And Vishnu John says, "Would you like to travel with us?" And I just went, "What? I'm not even a devotee. I'm, and Vishnu John said, "Oh, we want you to come, So anyway, he said, we're going to go we're going to drive around for a week and come back. So just drive with us for a week." So I went on the bus with them. Pretty much all I had was some clothes and a sleeping bag, and that was it, and I just, was on the bus. And it was actually an amazing time. At night, what we would do is we would just drive somewhere, who knows where, and just set up. And then Vishnu John would just say, "Can anybody," because all these people would come, and then he would say, "Can anyone put us up for the night?" And every day it was like that. We would just find someone who wanted us. We would park in somebody's driveway or something like that. And, that was life, We would all sleep on the bus, and we would all get out our sleeping bags and stuff. And then Vishnu John would tell us good night stories, usually about Radha and Krishna. It was just, it's like, it was like a magical time, hearing these stories and stuff. I remember one time, because we would then do the cook on the bus, well, obviously, and I remember one meal where I don't remember the prep. I think it might have been samosas or something. But anyway, they gave it to Tamal Krishna, and he goes, "These are the best I have ever had." And I said, "Oh," I said, "You want any more?" And he goes, And he goes, no, quality, not quantity. Yes, something I always have remembered from Tamal Krishna Goswami is that, quality, not quantity.
The perfection is there. If those seeds were to be watered, then those seeds of destruction or imperfection can grow right out of samadhi.
Wow.
Sorry about that, Prabhu. Please,
Oh.
please.
So anyway, continuing the story, went back after a week, and then they actually, at that point in time, I actually shaved up and actually started traveling with the bus. And we, so I traveled with the bus for maybe a month or something like that. And during that time, there was a couple of times when something would go wrong. Like the electrical went wrong, and at one time there was a problem with the, generator, and I fixed them. And Tamal Krishna said, we have this thing called a bus crew, and we want you to be a part of that. So they sent me to Tampa, Florida, which is where the bus crew was, which is where we were building 2 new buses. Yeah, Keshav Bharti was in charge. I remember Vipra and Dayal Chandra, and so we worked. We got these. It's kind of a timeline. This is like 30 years ago, or what, 40 years or whatever. But I remember coming up to Rath Yatra in Chicago, which is, I think, the same one night Katma was talking about, the big get together. That's where I got initiated. And I do remember on the day of Rath Yatra, the generator went out on Radha Damodar's bus. It went out. So everyone's going to Rath Yatra, and I'm all by myself, pulling the generator out of this bus and fixing the scoring and so on. And all of a sudden, all these pujaris come out. They brought all the maha from the noon offering and said, "Here, it's all yours." Kind of awesome. Anyway, just kind of on a side thing. We finished the buses in Tampa, and then I'm not sure who made the decision, but the decision was made to move the bus crew from Tampa. We were in Tampa because we were near Gainesville. So whenever there was a festival or anything like that, we would just go to Gainesville for it. We had our own Panchatattva that we worshipped. But the plan was to move the whole bus crew to Arizona, to Phoenix, where Nalini Kanta had his thing there. So we're driving the buses, and we were supposed to meet Tamal Krishna at the New Orleans temple. Okay, so we got all this equipment. The buses are empty, but they're packed with all this equipment. Moving to Arizona, and at some point, I remember Dayal Chandra was driving one of the buses, and he got really tired. So he asked me to take over. I had never driven a bus before in my life. I start driving out. Wow, this is just kind of like my Volkswagen van. So, no, it's not. Anyway, the long story short was what was supposed to be a triumphant, coming into the New Orleans temple with these 2 new buses. But what happened was, on the way there, I didn't brake properly and smashed my bus into the other bus, the back of the other bus. So we pulled into the New Orleans temple with 2 broken buses, and Tamal Krishna was not happy. He was very, very unhappy. Anyway, I don't know what, anyway, we ended up, it took a long time. We finally ended up in Arizona. I can remember cooking food on the bus, and we didn't have, there was no stove, no anything. So we would just like make garanga potatoes, and we would just put them all in this big pot and then use a welding torch to heat up to cook it. Yeah, if you can imagine holding a welding torch and just going like this for an hour trying to cook potatoes. So anyway, we got to Arizona. Nalini Council was not happy to have us there at all. So we ended up finding our own place in Tempe, and we set up with the buses and everything else. And we finished the buses. I can't remember who got the buses. One of them might have been Brahmananda's. But anyway, after finishing those buses, this was right after the big Vrindavan, where, if you remember, this, of course, Vishnu John went away. Adi Keshava came back as a Swami. It was really crazy. So anyway, I guess when we were in Tampa doing the buses, I was just helping with the bus, doing, getting dirty, doing mechanical, electrical work and everything else. When we got to Tampa, or when we got to Tempe in Arizona, Keshav Bharti said, I want you to be in the main office. I want you to organize and run the party. So that's when I started doing that. So that was my full-time job, talking to the various bus people on the phone, ordering books, ordering incense, doing all the money stuff. It was so funny. Tamal Krishna set up this idea that you would either buy stuff on the West Coast or buy stuff on the East Coast. But we had two bank accounts. So we would pay for the West Coast stuff with the East Coast bank account, and the West Coast stuff with the East Coast bank account, because that way it took longer for the checks to clear and we could still, have money even, it was a whole thing. He was actually very brilliant in terms of doing stuff like that. So anyway, in Tempe is when I started actually running the party and organizing everything and doing all the, taking care of everything essentially. And then after the whole Vrindavan thing, and Adi Keshava Swami came back, and then the decision was made, move to New York. So we packed everything up and moved everything to the New York Temple. And we set up a bus crew thing, a garage a couple blocks away from the temple. But that was it. The bus crew was there, and they were actually designing a brand new bus, but it never happened. The thing, the buses kind of stopped at that point in time. The idea was, once we were in New York, then, because of course, there was the whole bus, the book distribution, which was by this time, the whole bus program was more about book distribution than about actually having festivals. At some point in time, everybody focused on the book distribution. And of course, at that time, I was not on a bus, I was in the office. So I can't really give you a time frame as to when this actually kind of changed, but there was a huge emphasis just on book distribution, which of course produced a lot of money. And so the decision was made once we were in New York was to use the income from Radha Damodar to support Gita Nagari, the farm there. And so we were in New York for a while, and then they moved the whole office, the whole Radha Damodar thing got moved to Harrisburg, so we could be nearer to Gita Nagari. And so we were there in Harrisburg for a while. And while we were in Harrisburg, that's when Prabhupada left us. And that kind of shook everything up. And so then at that point, Dristadumna, who was in charge of the, I don't know where Keshavarti was at this time, but Dristadumna was now in charge of us. And so we made the decision to close the Harrisburg office and actually move to Gitanagari. And so we were there in Gitanagari, and there was one morning where I woke up and I ran to see Dristadumna. And I said, I had the weirdest dream last night. And Dristadumna said, I had a weird dream last night. And I said, my dream was Radha Damodar was telling me that they wanted to be at Gitanagari. And Dristadumna said, I had the same dream. And that's when we realized that, you know, the bus program was kind of ending. I think Radha Damodar knew that they needed a permanent place. And they were telling, you know, and Radha and Damodar were telling us, we want to be at Gitanagari. And so we made that happen. And kind of like, you know, once those deities, I honestly, I have no idea what happened to the buses. I don't know. maybe there's, you know, still driving around. Who knows? But for me, the end of the whole TSKP thing was when Radha Damodar actually decided to move to Gitanagari. And then after that, Tamal Krishna, he moved me to St. Louis, and then to Dallas, and then I ended up going to LA. When I told Tamal Krishna that I wanted to go to LA, I wanted to work with the BBT. And in typical Tamal fashion, he said, oh, you love Rameshwar more than you love me. And I said, no, this has got nothing to do with loving this person or loving that person. This is just, how can I serve Krishna the best? And since I have, you know, abilities in book, you know, I want to, you know, that's where I should be. Anyway, so I moved there and ended up there. But anyway, that's kind of like my Radha Damodar stories. I could tell stories about things that happened and stuff like that. When we were in New York, and Tamal Krishna was there for the Sunday feasts. I used to bring the feast to Tamal Krishna Maharaj in his room, and he would taste everything. It was kind of the same idea, you know. He wasn't a person that just, you know, oh, this, you know, but he would taste everything and he would comment on it and he would say, this is really good, this is really good, this is not. And then afterwards, I would go eat with the devotees, especially Pragosh, was, you know, I guess the top book distributor there in the temple there. Anyway, we would have, you know, we'd all get together, and Pragosh would always say, what did Tamal Krishna like the best? Well, you know, and so I would tell him all of his to say, you know, what he said about everything. And then when they met with Tamal, they would say, oh, wasn't this really good? Kind of a funny story. Anyway, I guess that's kind of it. Just about out of time.
No, thank you so very much. So yeah, we'll be hearing more from you as well, but now we'll let everybody chime in. Anybody would like to ask anything of the three devotees or say something related to what was said, please unmute yourselves and speak. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Rajendra. That was really great. Thank you.
Haribo?
Yes, please. Chaitanya Chandra.
I just have a question for Rajendranath Prabhu.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Haribo. Well, you remember me from Philadelphia? Remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I kind of missed Philly. I was there for a while. Yeah.
So you were like the vice president, treasurer, but you were kind of running the whole thing because Jusudumna Maharaj was the president of Gita
Right.
Nagar and Philadelphia at that time, right?
Yep.
How did that happen? Do you remember?
I'm not sure that I can remember how it happened. I was more of a worker bee than the upper. All I know is Jusudumna and the whole Radha Damodar. Yeah, we first moved to Philadelphia, but the idea was I guess it was that because that was closer to Gita Nagari than New York was. So yeah, we went from New York to Philadelphia, then to Harrisburg, then to Gita Nagari. Yeah, but as to why, that's above my pay grade.
I was only there for about a year or so. We were distributing books at the airport there, and I would check in with you every night and give you the collections, and
Yep.
that was sweet. That whole time there in Philly was very sweet.
I remember in Philly, one of the things about Philly was because I was collecting all the money, and I would salt some aside. I would set some aside until I had $1,500. And then once I had that $1,500, then I was able to buy the Prabhupada, for the statue, because that's what it cost. And they, everyone kept saying, no, we can't afford that. It'd be really awesome to have it, but we can't afford it. So I just kind of salted away the money and then ended up surprising them. Say, hey, look, we can buy a Prabhupada.
How long did you stay in Philadelphia for? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I think it was like maybe 6 months that we were there.
I left in '79 sometime because the Radha Damodar party kind of reconvened in St. Louis and I drove with Jusudumna and Giridhari to St. Louis and to kind of like re-engage everybody in different ways.
Yep.
Rajendranath Prabhu, this is Vaikunthadev.
Hey!
I was really relishing your stories, and as I don't know if you recall, but we met in New York. Of course, that was the first place we met, and since that time, even as soon as I joined, I was petitioning Tamal Krishna Maharaj to get me on a bus immediately. But you were one of the reasons I really enjoyed being in New York, and after I had been on the bus and then come back from my father's funeral and all of that stuff, I was assigned to the bus garage, and I was working with. I remember Dravanaksha was there, and Bria.
Oh yeah, Dravanaksha. Forgot about him.
He passed away, unfortunately, and Bria Banu. He was a challenging fellow.
Yeah,
be working with. Although he gave me a good compliment, he said, "Hey, you wheel these buses around pretty good." So I thought that was nice coming from him, and Dial Chandra was there, and Vipra, yeah, who could forget? And one of the things I remember about that is that we were invited to have breakfast with the Sankirtan devotees. Now, I had never been a Sankirtan devotee. I was a driver and a middling mechanic. So, and I remember thinking, because the New York Temple was so big in those days, and the prasadam for the rank and file devotees was pretty plain in the morning. It was usually, we called it lead bread, and something else, some kind of tea or something like that. but they said, no, you're taking care of the vehicles for Radha Damodar. You should take prasadam with the Sankirtan devotees. And so we were invited into this special room on the second floor that was just for the Sankirtan devotees to have breakfast. You must have been there at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, seeing all the big shots were there, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and everybody else, and Pragosha and, Vaishashika, all the big book distributors. And we would get the most opulent prasadam. I think it was as opulent as a Sunday feast, at least, but like the dal would have huge chunks of curd floating in it and coconut and all this opulent dal and fancy rice in it. And I remember thinking, boy, this is a little bit classist here, the rank and file devotees are getting, gruel and lead bread, and this is like the most opulent. Of course, I ate it all. I didn't say, well, this is not right. I'm going to go sit with
yeah, this all came, of course, on the buses. You would just make a big meal in the morning because there was no lunch. You're out all day doing stuff,
Right.
And then by the time you come back, it's like, nighttime. You don't want a big meal then. So, for the whole bus program was the big meal, was the morning meal.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of the things. We always had good cooks on those buses, and I know that's what kept me around. So, but I also wanted to remind you of something, because you've done so much for so many people that you probably have forgotten most of it. But for me in particular, something happened when I was on the buses. I had an article, which was actually a transcript of a Back to Godhead article, which was the very first thing I had ever read about Krishna in my life. And it was my prized possession. It was a transcript of an interview between Achyutananda Swami was interviewing Prabhupada's godbrother, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And it was, the title was The Descent of the Holy Name. And I carried this with me everywhere. It was about a 10-page stapled together typewritten thing. And I didn't know anything about anything when I first picked that up. And I knew it was the truth, and I cherished it always. Well, someplace in my travels on the Radha, I lost it. And it was my prized possession. And that was in 76. And then I'm going to try to show this here. In 1978, it looks like the postmark here is December 12th, 1978. I got this. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it's an envelope from you to me in New York. And inside was my article.
Nice.
Wow, I do not remember this at all. Wow.
Well, like I said, you do so many kind things for so many people that you forget. And I just wanted to say that you saved my most cherished possession in this world, which is, I put my name on it because I brought this to school with me when I was 17 years old, and I carried it with me everywhere so I could share it with people, because to this day, it still inspires me. So I wanted to thank you for that kindness and just the beautiful memories. You always did nice things for me. So I want you to hear that. And I really hope that we can stay in touch after this. Where are you now? Where are you living now?
Redlands, California.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's not terribly far, although distances seem really far these days compared to those days. So
hey, come on, nowadays 2 blocks away is a big distance.
Yeah, when you think of all the traveling we did, it was really quite amazing. Anyway, so thank you for being part of my amazing experience.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Vaikuntadeva Prabhu, is it possible for us to get a copy of that from you for our archives?
I've made, yes, if somebody, I'll have, if Shaibi Mataji can text me the address, I'll be happy to send you a copy of that. And, it's too
best would be to scan it. Scan it and send it.
Well, my scanner has a document feeder and it won't scan if I just lay it on plate. So it's too fragile right now to, but I've made lots of photocopies of it.
Have you ever heard of Kinkos?
I've heard of them. I have heard of them.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll figure a way. I'll make it happen. It may not be. It's not going to be the original anyway, so it's probably going to be a copy of a copy. But you know what? The nectar and the mercies. It doesn't. That's the beauty of spiritual things, because it doesn't matter how many copies you make of it. The potency is not lost at all. That's how many books did you wonderful devotees distribute?
Actually, the potency
copies.
only increases. Actually, it only increases. Touched by the lips of every devotee, it just becomes better and better. Thank you.
Right.
Wonderful. Please, anybody else would like to say something?
Hey, Maheshwara, come on.
Maheshwara.
I'm on now. Speaker on? Microphone on?
Yes, you're on now.
Yeah. Actually, I've had an extraordinary relationship with Rajendranath for, ever since I met him. And I've said this before, it's like when I came back from India, I was sort of spinning in a bunch of different directions, and I realized it looked like I was probably going to get involved in householder life, and I wanted to really establish myself in a career where I didn't have to drive a taxi or do something like that. And Rajendranath was very kind. We had just purchased. I ended up working with Amarendra in the legal office, and this was kind of like in the breakthrough days of the computer technology was sort of exploding all over the place. And so the legal office needed, secretarial equipment to do legal documents. And so we went and we actually purchased one of the first multi-networking single CPUs called Altos Computer from Adhikeshava Swami, who was running a computer company at the time. And then, of course, we had to kind of put it all together. And Rajendranath is also extremely talented in the computer industry. I don't know where he got that talent from, but he spent a lot of time training me and teaching me everything I needed to know to understand how to run a computer, and to so much effectively that I eventually was able to completely fool the United States Navy that I was a big database engineer, because I put together the first LA telephone book and I succeeded in actually getting a 30-year career as a result of that. So I feel very indebted. I always tell Rajendranath he's like my computer guru, and I appreciate it so much. But Rajendranath did a real lot for everywhere he went, and he was really kind of the brains behind the whole Radha Damodar traveling party, if anybody was. I mean, Tamal was the inspiration, and there were other people who helped. But when it came around to like shipping airplane cargo crates to airports all over the country to pick up books, I mean, I know I was on Drista Dumi's bus, and it was like one morning, it was like we had to completely coordinate the bus and all of the satellite vans to go to someplace like the Oklahoma airport. I don't know where it was at the time. And we drove in there, and they unloaded this huge airplane cargo freight, which is a significant, I don't know how many cubic feet.
LD3.
What's that?
It's called an LD3.
Yeah, big, huge cargo crate. And we literally went in there and packed everything, the whole bay of the bus, the van. I mean, the vans were packed. You couldn't even get it. You couldn't get a piece of paper in there. And we had everything packed. We barely just got everything distributed into all of the trucks, and we all left the airport. So those kind of things were coordinated by Rajendranath in LA, making sure it got shipped to the right place, and everybody had to kind of know where they were going. And it was quite a logistics operation with all of these buses going all over the country, and literally moving practically at one. I know at least on our bus, we would pull into a KOA and stay there for about a week, and then the satellite buses would go out, and then everything would move. So this was quite an effort. And again, I think at this age, we're all kind of looking back, and everybody has repeatedly said the same thing, is that I know for myself, it was mystical. It was completely mystical how we were all empowered and encouraged and did stuff that was like, otherwise, when you look back on it, you go like, did I really do that? I mean, was I really part of that? It's like, I mean, how could that have ever happened? And again, part of it, I'm really convinced, and this Satsrup talks about this in the introduction to his Lilamrita, how Krishna made this arrangement so that at that particular time, the whole Vietnam War, this country was in turmoil, hippies were walking out, nobody wanted to get involved. In our generation, the what do you call it, the baby boomer generation was like rejecting materialism, and we're all looking for alternatives and trying to find some meaning in life. And Prabhupada shows up in New York in 1965, like practically speaking, the year of the flower child in San Francisco. And the doors were open and people were ready. Unfortunately, I think I'm speaking for everybody today. The mood of the public is not the same. Generation X and millennials and Generation Z, they're in a lot of cases it's scary because they've given up and the economy is gone. I mean, who can go into a career hoping to pay for a house when the cheapest house in California is running about $1 million? So the world has changed radically, and so the stories we share here on these memories are not only historical, but they're also a way of remembering and realizing how Krishna put all the pieces in place for all of this to happen so that Prabhupada could successfully plant the Hare Krishna movement into the Western world, which, again, because of our enthusiasm and our kind of reckless abandon for social customs. And I mean, it wouldn't have happened in India because India's culture is completely different. But we had naked hippies running through baseball games, streaking and doing just crazy stuff. And so when Prabhupada said, "Hey, come put on a bed sheet, stand on a corner and bang on a tambourine," everybody said, "Yeah, sure, we'll do that. Why not?" It's like, it was a whole kind of almost like who can be more weird than somebody else. Levi Strauss was selling blue jeans to everybody, telling everybody to do your own thing, and everybody's wearing the same blue jeans. I mean, it was all these crazy, idiosyncrasies that were going on. So anyhow,
my Ishwar, to piggyback on that, I mean, I wanted out of material life completely, and that's what attracted me to the devotees, because they really seemed to be, first of all, Bhagavad Gita just shook me awake, and so did that article. And I realized this was the truth, and I had been searching and searching, but I didn't want anything to do. I didn't want to be part of an institution as much as I just didn't want to be part of, materialistic life. And there was nobody that represented that more than the devotees. And especially, Srila Prabhupada's mercy was just so expansive, and it was all his Shakti that created all of this. And so I really felt like I was part of a special elite force. And when I got on Radha Damodar, then I really felt like, well, this is the elite of the elite of the counterculture. There's no further distance between materialistic life than being on a Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party bus. And the devotees that led all that, they were so inspiring. And I looked up to everybody, and I didn't understand how anybody could go out into that frightening world and distribute Prabhupada's books. I was terrified. So for me, the proper service was, behind the scenes, behind a steering wheel, wrenching on buses. But I got the mercy of all of those other devotees. So it was Prabhupada's, that's real trickle down,
Right.
Prabhupada to the devotees, to the rank and file people like me. So that's that's where Das honor Das honor Das. And we're all blessed that we got to participate in that and meet other great souls who are also participating in that. So thank you all.
Yeah, I like I said the last time I spoke, it's like for me, Radha Damodar was like the Marine Corps of the Hare Krishna movement. It was like there was no messing around. It was like you went out and you know, duty and mission was mission. You know, our mission was to go out there, like Regina said. I know there was a lot of festivals in the early days of the formation of the Radha Damodar party, but when I came, it was like, you know, get out there and distribute the books and don't take no for an answer and just plow through whatever you had to plow through. And, you know, like I said, it was almost like the mission was the purpose and there was no other mission. So
who better to head that mission up than Tamal Krishna Maharaj? He was so focused. He was so focused on that mission, and nothing could deter him. And I told this story on my little time when, you know, I was driving him around New York when he was being the first time he was being sent to China, and you know, even that he took a service that he didn't want. He didn't really want to go there, but Prabhupada chastised him and said, "You're going to China." So I was driving him around, but even in that, he was so dedicated. And he pointed, we were following a bus and the light was turning yellow in front of the bus. And he just said, if that bus goes through that red light, you go through the red light. And a bus went through the red light. I went through the red light. And of course, I got pulled over by the police, and got a ticket. So that was how determined he was. And who better to lead up the Radha Damodar party than that?
Yeah, I'd actually
that reminds me of a talking about him being determined. There was one time we were talking about how we all came to the movement, and Tamal Krishna was telling me that he was in New York City and he was walking around, and wherever he went, he smelled dog shit, you know, and he goes, I hate this city. I'm moving to the West Coast. And the next morning he realized that he had sat in some dog shit, which is why he smelled it wherever he went. but he stuck to his guns and moved to San Francisco, and that's where he joined the movement.
He told me that story when we were in the car.
Yeah, I actually have a question. Jendranath might be able to shed some light on this because as we all know, somewhere around 1975 or 6, actually, I think it was 76, we bought this huge 13-story building right smack in Manhattan. Just, it was like within 2 or 3 blocks of Times Square, probably the most important.
It was 3 blocks away from Columbus Circle.
Well, that too.
It was nowhere near Times Square.
We used to do Harinam down to Times.
Yeah, okay, maybe it was a couple more blocks, but yeah, Columbus Circle is obviously, they had the Rockefeller Center, I think it was up there. But anyhow, the point is, it was right smack in the middle of New York. Prabhupada was very, very proud of it. He thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But my understanding is that, you know, when the devotees had the Brooklyn Temple, they outgrew it. I mean, apparently very quickly. And I know I went there once before I joined, when I was still in college, and I came down with some high school friends, and I remember staying really, really late. And as we were leaving out, you could see the devotees were pulling their sleeping bags out, and it was packed. I mean, people were just sleeping all over the place, and it was way, way overloaded. So they knew they had to get a bigger place. And my understanding is they took 2 or 3 years of intensive saving to get the down payment for the New York 55th Street Temple. But in our usual kind of naive, youthful innocence, you know, you can imagine they took 3 years to get the down payment down, but nobody really completely comprehended what it meant to make a monthly payment on this huge building in New York. And it rapidly became apparent, especially because I was there, and I'm sure Rajendranath remembers this, that, you know, just heating that building cost like $10,000 a month, something ridiculous. And nobody had really taken all these expenses into account. And one of the ways that we supposedly were going to save money was we decided to turn off the heat in the building in the middle of the winter. And of course, that was not a good idea, because in New York, it gets really, really cold. And one night I was yanked out of my bed and they said, come on down, you got to go down. And I literally went like 4 stories down underneath the street level to the very bottom of the building, where there was a sump pump and the pipes had broken and they were leaking because they froze and they cracked. And it was a major, major, fiasco. But the part I was interested to know about was that was one of the reasons why I believe that I was led to believe that Radha Damodar was brought to New York because we were the biggest money generating part of the whole movement at the time. And New York needed a big cash flow to keep the bills paid and to keep things functioning. And, there's a lot of things that have been said about how this happened and that happened. And they sold the building in prematurely or was mismanaged or whatever it was. But I think the real mistake was not made in the management that came in, which tried everything they could to survive, to keep the building there and keep it alive. The mistake was that nobody really completely understood what it meant to run a 13-story building in the biggest city in the world, and all of the peripheral expenses on top of all of the preaching expenses. And I know another thing a lot of people probably don't realize was that it didn't take long for the local, shall we say, the underprivileged citizens in New York City to realize that they could get this whole huge feast at the Hare Krishna Temple on 55th Street. And in a very short period of time, we had this long, long line of homeless people standing on the streets all the way down to the corner to come in. And they didn't care about preaching. They didn't care about deities. They just came there to get a free feast. And it really became a very serious problem because, and then of course the nice, pious, supportive Indian people who really wanted to come and see the deities and take a little prasadam were literally getting squished out. And it wasn't a very pleasant thing to have to walk through all of these homeless people who were dirty and not, weren't clean and so forth. And so I believe the way they resolved that problem, because they asked Prabhupada, what should we do? And Prabhupada said, you make a big, big, big pot of khichdi and you stand at the door and you give these little Chinese containers, and the homeless people that want something to eat, you give them each a little, because they didn't care about anything else. And you just give it to them and they'll go away. And then the Indian people and the other people who want to support the temple would be able to come in and actually take the feast. But I don't know. I was just thinking now's the opportunity. Maybe I could ask Rajendranath from his side of the fence as being part of the administrative and accounting and all the kind of stuff he was doing from the office that ran the New York Temple, if he has any insights or information regarding the actual.
No, I had nothing to do with the running of the temple itself, but I do recall that at that time that Radha Damodar was providing money to the temple to help support the temple. I couldn't tell you at this time how much or anything like that, but I do remember that that was part of our thing was supporting the temple.
Yeah, I mean, Radha Damodar was called in kind of like in a desperate attempt to be able to keep the bills paid. And I think Radha Damodar at that time, as I think a few people have already mentioned, was starting to dissolve. Of course, we went to Harrisburg, the deities went to Harrisburg. And like you said, and actually it never occurred to me what did happen to all those buses. I mean, it'd be really interesting if anybody knew where they went, because they were, we had a whole fleet of these vans and buses, and they probably got dissolved into different temples. But it's always bothered me because, New York's, the New York Temple was a really prized accomplishment by Srila Prabhupada. And I think everybody's very disappointed at what happened, but I think it was really just due to the collective naivety of the devotees that we kind of bit off more than we can handle at the time. And I don't know if there was any other real solution other than what they did. I mean, we could argue about that all day long, but I try to be more.
Wasn't it you that did the Hare Krishna sign, the big letters outside? Wasn't that you?
No, I wasn't involved with that, but I was, and Vaikuntha knows very well, I was very seriously involved in building the whole altar, which was a kind of a replica of the Govindaji temple in Vrindavan. And it's kind of heartbreaking because we really did a good job. I mean, it was a little bumpy road getting there, but we really did a good job. And you know, the New York Temple was extraordinary in many, many ways, but it was more than I think we could collectively handle at the time, which is hard to say and hard to admit, but I think that's really what it got down to.
Yep.
Certainly without Srila Prabhupada's presence, we couldn't manage it. But while he was here, the Shakti and the things that we did were incredible and amazing and beyond the pale. But with regard to that altar, am I on here? I can't.
Yeah, you're on.
Tell. I remember you dispatching me to go get some fixative or some sort of adhesive that needed to be, we had to get the elephants up.
I think it was hydrocal. Hydrocal is like a cement casting material, which is, you can get really
Friday afternoon. Yeah. All I knew is, and I had to be in the Bronx in like less than an hour before this place closed for the weekend. And Prabhupada was coming. There was no question. These elephants had to go up. And I commandeered Bindu Madhava's motorcycle and I tore through rush hour traffic up the West Side Highway on this big Honda and got to the place 5 minutes before they closed, loaded the luggage rack in the back seat with 100 pounds of this stuff strapped on. And, you know, once it was totally illegal to split traffic in New York, but I did it. And I don't know how fast I was going, but somehow or other, I made like a 50-minute trip in like 30 minutes in rush hour. So I got there just in time and we got the elephants got up. But yeah. Another story of when we were working together on that altar, I don't know, this is partially helpful because we were playing around. We were in the second floor and we were with Bhaskar. And we started having a fight with clay. You know, we started throwing clay at each other. And it was just one of those lighthearted moments where, you know, we were just goofing around. And I threw a piece of clay and it stuck to Bhaskar's head right here.
Oh, right where the spot is.
Yes. Yeah. And he, you know, he's Australian, so his accent is comical anyway. He just said, "Oh, look at me, I'm Tamal Krishna." And at that exact moment, Maharaj walked past the door and looked in and saw him with the spot. He must have heard it because he was so close and the spot was right on his head. And he just looked in, gave us a stern look and just kept walking. And then we were like holding our breath. And then of course, as soon as he was, we just cracked up and we all started laughing again. And it was just one of the, you know, it just seems like Krishna, you know, somehow or other, the mystical hand was involved in everything that was going on there. And it was just delightful, the whole thing. I mean, it was really intense while we were preparing because Prabhupada was coming. So the intensity level was just ramped up and there was so much stress and everything like that. So when these lighthearted moments came, they were extra nectar because, you know, we really got to enjoy a little bit of relief, a little comic relief from the intensity of trying to not just get that building together. You were mentioning the boiler. And do you remember Boiler Room Bobby?
Yeah.
Okay. We had 3 Bhakta Bobs and I was Motorcycle Bob 1 and there was Bindu Madhava, who was Motorcycle Bob 2 and Boiler Room Bobby. And, you know, the PA would say, "Boiler Room Bobby, please." And every now and then he would emerge from the boiler room and his face is like covered in soot and everything. He lived down there, but he always had this beautiful smile on his face. He was like so humble and so sweet and he worked so hard on it. I could never figure out whether is he smiling because he's just so naturally, saintly, or is he just smiling because he's seeing the light of day? Because he's been down there for like 30 hours straight. And, but he lived down there and he, if there was any heat, which there wasn't often, it was due to his efforts. So grateful to Boiler Room Bobby. I wonder where he is today.
We're going to go on for another 30 minutes. That's how much the host, we've got 30 more minutes. Just so you know, I have to drop off for another meeting, but thank you all so very much. It's really an amazing, amazing program, but please continue. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Somebody else would like to ask a question or something? Ask of the devotees. General devotees amongst those, the disciples, grand disciples, if any of you would like to say something, ask questions of these wonderful devotees while we have a chance. Well, looks like we might just bring to a close right now then, if that's okay with you all. We will be meeting again. We'll let you know the next meeting. We're going on to, well, maybe this is the last one for this month, and then we're going to start again in June. That's what I was hearing from Shabia, but she will let us know. Shabia, what's the next program?
I have to schedule Prabhu, but nothing this month. So will be next month.
In June. Well, till June, we'll all stay tuned for the next program. We'll announce it so everybody can come on at that time as well. Thank you all so very much. Vanchakalpatirubhischa, Kripasindhubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhya, Vaishnavebhya, Namo Namah. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party devotees ki Jai. Thank you all.
Rajendranath Prabhu, I'd like to get in touch with you personally. After
Yeah.
So Maheshwar has your number, correct?
Maheshwar, yeah.